My name is Aude, Bertrand. I work for Catholic Relief Service in Syria, and I will be your host today for this session, where we will be talking about how partnership between development financier and technical agency can drive more resilient livelihoods and job creation in post-disaster recovery. So this conversation is quite critical in our days and age, where disasters across the globe are increasing in strength, but in impact on human and destruction and damage. In Pakistan, for example, like more than the last flood in 2022, the major flood, affected more than 23 million people, with over 8 million displaced, and created widespread devastation across home, agriculture, infrastructure, and basic services. Entire community lost their means of income. Livelihood were decimated for millions, and especially in the poorest and more climate vulnerable districts. So this is why we're having this conversation, and when we're discussing about collaboration and collaborative partnership to increase impact. So why between development financiers and technical agency is because development financier brings scale, long-term investments in risk-tolerant capital. Technical agency contribute to deep expertise in social inclusion, deployment of sustainable and locally appropriate solutions. So when those capabilities come together, they can transform recovery efforts into an engine of job creation, especially for women and marginalized groups, often hit the hardest. So today's panel will bring us a valued opportunity to explore how we can collectively do better, how financing, technical know-how, and community leadership can align to deliver recovery that is not only faster, but fairer, not only restorative, but also transformative. So before we jump into the conversation, let me introduce our panel. So let me start with Mr. Akbar. He's working as a senior disaster risk management specialist with the World Bank. He joined the bank in 2011 and has served in agriculture, urban resilience, and practice group in Afghanistan, Nepal, and Pakistan. Currently tasked leading the world's largest post-disaster housing reconstruction project here in Pakistan. He also acts as a coordinator for World Bank's SINS program to support multi-sector operation. He has extensive operational technical experience across a range of topics, including disaster risk management, post-disaster housing reconstruction, area-based development, community livelihood, infrastructure, rural enterprise, and tourism development. Next to me is a senior development professional with over 21 years of distinguished experience in sustainable development, labor rights, and social protection. Currently serving as a senior program officer with ILO in Pakistan, she drives key program teams and acts as a focal point for the government of Pakistan. Her expertise spans the application of international labor law, skill training, livelihood, and the promotion of safe and inclusive workplace across key industry. Prior to her work with ILO, she's contributing her expertise to other leading international organizations, including GIZ, the British Council, and UNDP. Mr. Shafi is the lead officer heading the Urban Water and Disaster Management Unit in the Pakistan Resident Mission of the Asia Development Bank. He's a civil engineer with more than 37 years of experience and as a development professional with 24 years with ADB. He has worked with different multilateral and bilateral agencies and brings a mix of experience from the private and public sector on project design, delivery, and management. His core areas of work has remained in water, urban development, transport, and disaster management, where he has led delivery of projects and programs for more than 5 billion USD. Together with other multilateral partners, he has led more than 7 PDNAs, post-disaster recovery strategy, and plans for major disasters, including the 2010, 11, 14, and 22 flood in Pakistan. And online, if we can connect with our online speaker, we have our colleague, Mr. Yazdani, who brings over 2 decades of expertise in forging high-impact partnerships that bridge development financing, livelihood programming, and multi-stakeholder collaboration. Since 2021, he is the Islamic Development Bank representative for Pakistan. He has acted as the bank's primary liaison with the government body, bilateral donors, and international organizations, advocating for collaborative financing solutions to support resilient shelter settlement economic recovery program. His earlier leadership with Creative Associates International and CHF International centered on market-driven livelihood development, designing microfinance and agribusiness intervention that generate sustainable employment for displaced community and informal settlement residents. So we have a very esteemed panel members who bring a different point of view from development financier, but also technical agencies. And we are lucky to have this conversation today around collaboration and partnership. So we are definitely looking forward to your insight on this panel. And without further ado, will start with my first question for the panel members. So our discussion today is around partnership. And we will have this as our key questions around this discussion. And the first one that I have is how does partnership for inclusive programming, including livelihood, helps rebuild the life of vulnerable families in post-disaster recovery context? Mr. Akbar.
Can I have those pictures? Right. Well, giving you time constraints, so what I'm going to do is tell you a story instead of giving you numbers, so on and so forth. I'm taking this example from Nepal Multi-Donor Trust Fund, which was a $34 million trust fund. It was funded by USAID, FCTO, Government of Canada, and then World Bank, also GMPRR. So we were the 5 partners who were working together in Nepal post-disaster housing project. So when we decided to go for economic recovery for persons with disabilities, I took this example from there. This is a chia station, and you are seeing this matka, we call it matka tea. So can we go to the next slide? This person on wheelchair, his name is Pravesh Sharma. He was diagnosed with spinal cord cancer, and doctors predicted that he would live for around 10 years. That's it. So when we started our training program, so our training program was based on 5 fundamental principles. One is empathy. Unless you feel the pain of your beneficiary, you cannot deliver. And that is something which is critically important, to have empathy instead of sympathy. You can sympathize with a lot of people, but empathizing is very difficult, but that is what we do. The other is rebuilding self-confidence, because people lose confidence as a result of disaster. So what we did was that we started rebuilding the confidence so that people become self-confident. And we picked up 12 persons with disabilities whom, in our view, had a potential to be economically well off and become good trainers and become a cadre of trainers for entrepreneurship development for persons with disability in post-disaster situations. The other was facilitation, no solution suggested. That the moment you suggest a solution, instead of facilitating people to find solution, you are ready for failure. So we decided that no solution to be suggested. Pyramidal hierarchy of whole economic development, which is basically at the base, very small, micro, nano businesses or livelihood opportunities, then graduating upwards on the pyramid and going at the top. And last was contextualization. So this person, he decided to choose a chia business or tea business. And what you're seeing on the right is our directors who we really were very pleased to meet this person. He had no confidence at all. So our training program was that you invest for the first 3 days from your own sources, establish a business, learn either you will lose money or you will earn money. And what you will have is this experience. And once that is there, then we start training. So that we can build empathy with two things, on two accounts. One is disability and the other is entrepreneurship or business development. So this person, he decided to, for this tea station, can we go to the next slide? This is just one portion of his business plan which he developed. So we worked a lot for help him in establishing this business plan. Can we go to the next? This is his tea. This was in 2019. I visited him in 2022. I last visited him in 2024, and he has expanded his business. So he's one of the 12 persons whom we were able to facilitate. I'm not saying we developed, rather facilitate for him to identify his own potential, work on his own potential. We could not have been able to do it without the support which was extended by our partners, which is, as I said, CID, FCDO, Government of Canada, GFP. So what you are seeing is, as I said, again I repeat, empathy, which is critically important, helping people to gain self-confidence, and of course, as I said, we did not suggest any solution to him. This was his idea. We facilitated him to find his own strength, his own potential, and build on that. So that's all.
Thank you. What a powerful story. I have a follow-up question. It's like, what about what lesson were learned in ensuring participation of vulnerable group through inclusive job creation and livelihood enhancement? So what kind of key lesson learned, like how inclusive we can make the process for vulnerable group and them leading their own process of job creation?
As I said, that Shaukat is one side. Shaukat is one side which was very interesting. In those days, before Christ era, slavery was common. And he said that even a slave has a knowledge, it's the art of questioning that will bring knowledge out. Right? As I said, facilitation. Facilitate people to find their solution, give them self-confidence. This self-confidence is so important. One of the things which you will observe is that those who are exploiters, what they do is they try to kill self-confidence of the poor, so they cannot question. So there's a kind of thing we have been doing. Now on this economic development, obviously for livelihood, as I cited example, that we, as I said, that we did not suggest solution, we rather help them to find their own solution and contextualize whatever they want to do.
Thank you for your intervention. I'm gonna turn my question to Ms. Razzaque. So we're talking about inclusivity and the importance of having people being part of the process. And what insights do we have from job study that can help partners better design labor-intensive and inclusive reconstruction program?
Thank you very much, Aude. I'll start with thanking the World Bank, SPHF, and the partner organizations, and of course for providing the ILO the opportunity to come here and share our experience. I think what Kamran Sahab has said rings a bell with our experience as well. Inclusion partnerships and using those on ground is absolutely pivotal. But just to sort of build on how ILO looks at it, I think if you're asking the question of how important it is to have labor-intensive programs which are also inclusive, we are already somewhere recognizing that it can no longer be recovery programs that are looking at immediate needs like restoration of damaged assets. But in fact, we have to go beyond that. We have to build capacities and capabilities of people for what they can be and what they can do. And that's where job assessment framework of the ILO kicks in. We look at not just the quantity of jobs created, we look at an extensive and a very comprehensive framework of what exactly are the sectors that are offering job potential. Is it climate resilient infrastructure? Is it green skilling? Is it ecosystems restoration? Is it circularity or waste management and so on? Within that, where is the skills? Is it available locally? Do we need these skills, or the local communities, do they need just transitions? Do they know what climate appropriate skills are or green skills are? And if these skills are not there in the local market, are there migrant workers who bring those skills? Can they be employed safely? Is another question. And then, of course, also, how well are your local enterprises and SMEs doing? Do they have the capacities to supply inputs? Do they have the capacity to do logistics? Or inputs to construction? Are they close by? Are they at a distance? What's the cost of transportation? We also look at the quality of jobs, as I said, which is very much the bread and butter of the ILO. So we're looking at, are they paying decent wages? Is there a working time that's being monitored? Is there occupational safety and health provision for workers? Are children involved? Are they involved as unpaid child labor? Are women being given same wages? Should be given more, but are they given the same wages for the same or equal value of work? Do disabled persons have access? Are youth involved? So, all these indicators are very important when you're creating labor-intensive programs, when you're looking at human capacities and long-term human development. And I would like to share our experience. If you look at the next slide. So we did this in 2023 with SPHF. And one sort of disclaimer, you can do job assessments at the outset when you're planning the intervention. You can do it during the implementation. You can do it post-implementation to actually see whether you were able to achieve what you had, the targets that you had set out to achieve. And we did it when the SPHF had started this work. We identified 12 beneficiaries, so 12 homes, and which were near completion or were almost done. And this was like a good hand-holding of 6 months where we actually were able to identify exactly how many work days were created in terms of employment, what was the direct contribution to employment, what was the indirect contribution to employment, and we used a mix of quantitative and qualitative tools and surveys using ILO's Employment Impact Assessment Framework, which basically meant that we were in the community with the beneficiaries who were receiving these tranches. We engaged and had key informant interviews with their family members, with masons, with the village reconstruction committee, with suppliers in all those bricks, cement, sand, crush, steel, to actually see how much jobs were induced. And to our surprise also, we saw that there were women involved, of course much less in number, 3% of the total, but that they were participating, they were engaged, mostly in bricklayering and plastering, but with also the potential to move towards what Kamran sir was alluding to, what they felt they had a knack for, enterprise development, local small karyana shops, grocery stores, that they thought they can sort of venture into. And that's the kind of anticipation these job assessment reports or studies can bring out for you to revisit whether you're meeting your targets, whether you want to redefine your targets, and what who will benefit from this long-term development or recovery at the end of the day. So this you're looking at is those 12 homes in 4 villages, but concentrated in Hyderabad. And our teams, sitting with the community, and again, it's a consultative process, it's an inclusive process, and that's at the heart of these job assessments that then help you formulate your strategies.
Great, thank you, and thank you for those pictures and those examples, like very concrete example. So I have a question linking this to like recovery partnership, and how can we structure recovery partnership to maximize job creation and inclusive job creation also?
Thank you. Again, I mean, unfortunately, it took us a couple of crises to get here where we're talking about collaborations and joint partnership for job creation. And I think again, the response to crises has evolved. We see it's no longer humanitarian relief. It's more integrated. The human development peace nexus. And to the ILO, the decent work pillar is at the center of this nexus. And if you really want inclusive, sustainable human development, long-term development, then you have to give people the skills, jobs that they can sustain themselves and their families. And this partnership, again, I refer to ILO's. We have a normative framework, so you must have heard of conventions and recommendations. There's a recommendation on decent work for employment, peace and resilience. It's recommendation 205, and which essentially talks about three main pillars, or you can call them the engines of recovery. And it actually says that, which would perhaps also answer your question on how do you move towards inclusion. The first pillar is social dialogue. Nothing is possible if you're not including the right stakeholders. And who are these right stakeholders? Who have their stakes or their interests at stake. So communities, workers who at the end of the day have to be engaged in actually not just being the implementers, but also drawing up their own fate and sort of informing the design of the intervention. Because at the end of the day, it's them who have to also live there. And now I'm talking particularly about the housing scheme. Enterprises, the local employer community. That's the engine of the ecosystem that you want to develop. Your market systems cannot develop if your employers are not on board. And then of course the government, because it has a regulatory sort of framework and mandate. So these three partners, which we in ILO's terms called the tripartite constituents, are very important to this participatory, inclusive process. And engagement. It not only builds credibility to the process, it brings ownership, and of course at the end of the day these three parties can also identify and anticipate if there will be disputes around settlements, if there will be any disruptions in the market. Social protection measures, what ought to be programmed around that, and of course also displacement risks, etc. So the whole idea of engaging these three partners is to renew the social contract on how rights can be protected and communities can be engaged. The second engine or tier, you may say, is basically the where the data is. What I said earlier on the job assessments. What are they saying? If you want a lasting structural transformation, you ought to be clear on where your money is going. So that is, I think I've said much about it already. So I don't want to eat up my time there. But that is the second pillar. What is the data telling you? Where is it driving you to? Which economic sectors need investment? Which demographic dividend needs to be capitalized on, and so on and so forth. And last pillar, I think I'd stress more on that, is which we need to do more of. So it's the integrated aspect to development. We talk about jobs creation, we don't talk about social protection. And in Pakistan, unfortunately, the discussion on social protection is limited to social assistance. We talk about cash top-ups, allowances, unconditional cash transfers. We don't talk about social insurance. And that's where we need to build that with employment opportunities. So again, linking jobs with social protection, linking public works with skills development. and skills development with a certification pathway. So it does not stop there. It actually helps the worker to be mobile, to be integrated into domestic and overseas market. I mean, there are aspirant workers everywhere. So, seeing that trajectory is very important. And lastly, on integration, I think also, which is an evolving phenomena now in Pakistan, and everyone is sensitized, is the climate resilient infrastructure, where we know just transitions, green skills, green jobs are central to having more adaptive climate resilient infrastructure. Of course, human development outcomes such as productivity, employability, rights come at the center of it. And I think that's where the discussion needs to be in terms of having joint programming. It's very easy to piggyback on each other's presence. I'm very thankful to World Bank colleagues who, in fact, were very open to, and kudos to SPHF. In fact, when they invited us to do this study, they weren't skeptical at all. They were very, very excited about this. They wanted to actually hear from a third party what sort of jobs are being created, whether they are decent jobs or not, and with that appreciation that this is an informal sector we're talking about. These are community themselves building homes. There's no public contractor or private contractor involved. So it's also being inward looking but future looking as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you for all those insights. I'm gonna move towards WASH intervention now, and ask a similar question to Mr. Shafi. How can partnership strengthen the integration of WASH services within housing reconstruction to support livelihood and long-term resilience?
Thank you. The answers are not very different. I think the crux basically lies at the very early stage of the whole process. So, how do we conceive, for example, WASH? At the face of it, it seems as if it is for life. So it's quality of life, it's a basic service. But at the end of the day, water is connected to livelihood as intimately as it is connected to life, for example. Whether you're making a pot, let's say if we take the example of SPHF, or whether you're constructing your own house, or whether you're cleaning dates, you need water, so one can go on and on. So it is as intimately connected to livelihood as it is connected to life itself. If we basically conceive this whole arrangement in terms of how WASH, and if you look at SPHF, the beauty of the whole model is that in this whole partnership, communities are in the center. So it is a partnership, if you like, in a larger sense between the government and its people. And that actually, and in between there are so many layers of partners, and the partnership is basically conceived around the comparative advantage of each partner. So it just didn't sort of fall from the sky. It was, part of the whole planning process that, how would this partnership interface, who has comparative advantage, whether these are NGOs or the private sector. So nobody tried to recreate the wheel. They just took the best of the best in terms of, private sector, NGO, and brought all those together. I think the trick is to somehow, one, planning, other is how do you, one, leadership of the same government also has a huge role in somehow allowing those partnerships to fall in place. Flexibility, trust, the whole ecosystem, clarity of role between partners, for example. Right? So I think similarly for WASH, the whole thing is how do you basically use WASH, not just for WASH, but the whole ecosystem. You can, for example, even directly connect WASH, for example, Rabia has talked about, programs which look at cash for work. SPHF is looking for a bottom-up approach where basically there are two ways of sort of delivery they're looking at.
One is the top-down one where you have specialized contractors come and basically deliver it. The other is to what extent can the communities carry wash themselves? So there is where the community become again the center stage. But even when you're doing top-down, there are opportunities where you become the livelihood can become part of this ecosystem. So you basically make them part of the formal contracting arrangement. You create incentives with the contractors, private sector around those, and certification, for example, that has been very successfully tried with GIZ and some other partners have actually done that. So it's part of the skill development, part of livelihood, if you like. So very direct also, and of course the indirect connection is also very strong. So
I just want to react on one of the points that you shared. So you were talking about sustainability and helping also with job creation. So what role do sustainable construction standards or materials play in generating local jobs? Is there a link there?
A very strong link. Whatever people basically do and have been doing for centuries, there's so much wisdom and knowledge, and those options are so well tried and tested that the more you are able to integrate those options in whatever solutions that you are providing, it is faster, it is well understood, it is tested. If you depend, again, Rabia talked about assessment of the local supply chains, local markets, because you want to capitalize or kickstart the economy typically after disaster. So if the standards that you use are close to what is available in the current supply chain, it basically helps you to basically bring them back to life. So you can basically design your whole program in a way where basically everybody, local economy, the larger one, and more specific one, and I mean one can go exotic, but there is a huge risk. For example, and we have tried it and we have succeeded and failed, if you like. If you when you talk about resilience, there are risks because of which you see what happened. Right? In a sense, houses got destroyed. So there was something wrong that needed to change. Right? So they had to construct in a different way. So you bring new ideas. So it's a marriage of the old and the new, or the existing knowledge and some new knowledge. But then, to what extent can you sort of go with something which is too exotic? And at times you have to, because it's a trade-off between time. Because if somebody doesn't have a shelter or children don't have schools, we can always tell them that it will take us the next 2 years to do it, or there could be options where we could turn them around in 6 months. So there are trade-offs, if you like. But long and the short, I think the basic rule, it has to be as local as that possibly can.
I'm going to go back. I'm going to go to the next speaker online, Mr. Yazdani.
Yes.
Okay. We can hear you, but we cannot see you yet. Give me 1 second. Good afternoon. We can see you now, and hopefully we can also hear you. Yes, so thank you for being with us. My question to you is going back to partnership and financing. How does Islamic Development Bank support livelihood and employment outcome through its recovery financing and partnership? Give us 1 sec because the sound is not working very well. Let's try again.
I
Yes.
can hear you. Can you hear me as well or not?
We can hear you, yes? Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, we are with you. You can go ahead.
Yes. Thank you very much, Aude. And I believe this year's theme, scaling inclusive climate resilient homes and communities in a nexus-driven new humanitarian world, captures precisely what we must achieve together. At the Islamic Development Bank, we do not view shelter and settlement recovery as merely rebuilding structure. We see them as foundational investments in livelihoods, jobs, and economic dignity. When we finance climate resilient housing or wash infrastructure, we are simultaneously financing local labor markets, small enterprises, and the social fabric that holds community together. Coming to your question, how does ISD support livelihoods and employment outcome? So, first of all, we integrate livelihoods into recovery financing from the first design phase, not as an afterthought. And this approach is anchored in our 10-year strategic framework, which prioritizes resilience, inclusive human development, private sector development, and climate action as interconnected pillars. To us, recovery is not a sector, it is a cross-cutting investment in human capital. We at Islamic Development Bank deploy concessional financing, blended finance, and result-based instruments to de-risk investment in post-disaster context and align capital with measurable employment outcomes. Just take the example of Pakistan's recovery. Together with all the MDBs, ISDB financing linked housing reconstruction with local procurement mandates and SME contracting, ensuring that every dollar spent on shelter generated downstream jobs in construction, logistics, and material supply. Secondly, for us, partnership multiply impacts by combining finance with delivery capacity of the local knowledge. ISDB actively co-financing with the government's MDBs, for example, just take the Sindh emergency flood reconstruction project. We are partnering with our colleagues, the ADB and World UN agencies, NGOs, and the private sector to ensure that financing reaches communities through trusted implementation channels. We do not operate in isolation. Let's take the example of Indonesia's post-disaster reconstruction program. ISDB supported initiatives combined housing plants with skilled trainings and sustainable materials, like bamboo treatment, earthquake-resistant masonry, and then linked the trainees directly to the reconstruction contracts. This created a skilled workforce that outlasted the emergency phase. We also emphasize local material sourcing, not only to reduce carbon footprints, but to retain economic value within the affected communities. To us, inclusion and climate resilience are not add-ons, they are job drivers. ISDB mandates gender-responsive and youth-inclusive recovery design. In multiple member countries, we supported women construction cooperatives and youth apprenticeship programs that transform short-term cash for work into sustainable livelihoods. We also integrated displaced population and people with disabilities through accessible design standards and targeted MSMEs support, ensuring economic participation is generally inclusive. Moreover, green construction and wash-related jobs like solar installation, water system maintenance, sustainable material production represent fast-growing employment segments that align with the climate objectives. So this is how we see this issue in this context. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and you also already answered my follow-up question in your presentation, so I'm going to just open the floor to the panelists once again, because I saw a lot of notes being taken, so I wonder if there is any additional reflections before we are opening the floor to the audience for questions. You-
tempted to say
Yes,
yes.
there's a question here. Oh,
Thank you. No, I think that's fabulous. And I've seen government PC ones also have, this one field on jobs creation. But I think it's time to move beyond, quantity. As I said, quality of jobs is very, very important. I think Shafi Sab also alluded to, skills development, and then our study also highlights, and I've already disclaimed, it was put out the disclaimer there that though the study was very sort of limited in its outreach. We took 12 beneficiaries, 12 houses, but we saw, the data itself was so rich. The projections are that the SPHF housing construction can generate a potential of 1 million jobs. 466,000 of these are direct jobs, and the remaining are indirect jobs in the supply chain. 71% of the beneficiaries are those that are unskilled. So now again, this includes, and then there are different sort of variables, unpaid family workers, workers who have indigenous skills, but then of course 29% are those who are masons, who are brought in for supervisory support. We also sort of dug deeper down into the 3% women that were employed, as family helpers, but they were paid for their processes and tasks they were involved in. Again, whether they were also there in supervisory roles, and then these were those who were also female-headed households. So it's very interesting when you sort of go deeper into what those statistics are. We also looked at what was the safety and well-being, PPEs given or not. We saw some of the interviews earlier this morning, and I think SPHF is a great model to learn from, and I think I saw in the audience there are people doing the same thing in Balochistan and trying to sort of weave that in, and that's a fabulous start. If you start looking at number of jobs created, but also quality of jobs, I think that will open up so many other interfaces in terms of, where are your partnerships who can help you with skilling. We need women more in unconventional skills, including masonry, but maybe site engineers or site, sort of surveyors or supervisors. So I think it's just a matter of sort of start digging up those numbers and looking at different permutations and variables. Opens up a entire different world for you. So I just wanted to sort of bring that out. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you for each of your interventions. I'm gonna hand over the floor to the audience to see if there is any questions. We have microphones in each side. Don't be shy, I'm sure there's questions for our colleagues from the banks. No questions, everything was so clear.
There's one reaction. One reaction. So every crisis has a positive side also. And the positive side is, if you look at strategic management, every challenge is equivalent to opportunity, because if the challenge is not addressed, opportunity is not taken, then it becomes a challenge. We carried out a study, crisis-sensitive value chain analysis in Waziristan. In the storm of when crisis was going on in Waziristan, we carried out a study to see that what were the 3 value chains which benefited from crisis, and what were the 3 value chains which were adversely affected because of crisis. And that helped us in devising our strategy to benefit our target group. So what we learned was that in Waziristan, pine net was the value chain which benefited most from the crisis. And all of us know the rate, the chada hai uske baad. So that's the kind of thing that for whenever there is a crisis, we need to go for these kinds of studies, because we as bank could not directly intervene, but at least we would benefit our beneficiaries.
Technique agency doing those studies, leading the study. Great. Any question in the audience? Don't be shy. Oh yes, first row.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, and thank you so much for organizing this session. I just wanted to, there's a general question. I'm sort of working in the development sector for past like 18, 20 years. and I've worked on multiple projects funded through different international development partners. So, how do you see this, the sort of initiatives, if they are designed in a way that those are like sort of community driven? Like if we take the example of SPHF, so you have involved the community in the initiative. So how do you see this to make sure the sustainability aspect of the projects in general, whenever you involve the community into your interventions by design, so they'll sort of enhance the sustainability aspect of it as well, like in case of SPHF, and if you compare it with the other interventions.
All right, who wants to go first?
Let me
Go for it.
look. We have to understand one thing very clearly. This is not the first owner-driven housing reconstruction project. This all started in 2005 after earthquake. Shaukat was from the ADB side leading that project. So what you're seeing is a constant evolution where a model was developed in 2005, then it was improved in 2010 floods, then it was further improved in 2015 Nepal earthquake, it was further improved in case of Sindh SPHF, and then it has been further improved in case of Balochistan. So you will see that there is an evolution of this model which has taken place. Now we need to understand one of the problems with the development interventionists or people like us is that we think that we are the first one who have done this thing. No, we have entered the process, we will play our role and we will exit one time, right? So, this is one point which I wanted to make, that this is critically important. Sorry, what was the next part of this?
I was just actually
asking if you
compare it with the other projects where communities are not involved in the interventions.
Yes. Now, we have to, for when it comes to projects like this, we have to entirely change the definition of sustainability. Our project is not supposed to remain sustainable. Project is to end one day. It has to have an ending date. For me, the sustainability is when I go in rural area of Sindh and I see that other people who are not beneficiaries of SPHF are building the houses the same way SPHF has built, then it is sustainable. The process is sustainable. Not only houses, even shops are being built the way they are built houses. So if you ask me, for me, principally, we should be exiting, and this role should be taken over by the people themselves. And this is what exactly happens in communities. They take this role, they move with this. Right? For instance, we talked of this entrepreneurship development. This person whom I was talking, he has employed 4 persons. So he continues. So if I'm not there, because I can't be there as a human being, I'm a temporary phenomenon. So for me, when it comes to community-driven projects, we have to look at the behavior of the community. If the behavior of the community is safe, you are sustainable.
I mean, very well. I mean, like housing is, if the adoption is good in a general model, that basically tells you that this model has sustained. So the definitions are different. But if you need, for example, go out of individual ownership and collective ownership, community infrastructure projects, or maybe even let me step back here. So one is community-driven housing reconstruction. There are examples where the government has intervened and they have driven the whole process. Right? Balakot, for example, the closest example in Pakistan is Balakot, still an empty city, right? People, and again, now think about how important is livelihood. Nobody moved to Balakot city. They were on the red line. They developed on the red line. The government said you cannot, but they took the risk. They took the risk of their own lives to what was driving it, their livelihoods. See the interconnection and the risk that people are willing to take to sustain livelihood. But they did not move to the new Balakot city, and the project actually failed. So, coming back to the ownership issue of collective, I think this norm or this approach, ownership actually does add a lot of value. If communities have given their sweat and blood in constructing something, they definitely would have more ownership, have more pain about it. But I think this larger logic in in terms of operation and operational sustainability, it's a mixed bag, if you like. The long and the short is that they are sustainable, but consider yourself in a position where you are expected to do community service endlessly. Can you do it? You have to, feed your own children also, right? This larger concept of having CBOs to basically run and operate systems without actually getting any money for it is a farce in a sense. So, if you are able to create organizations or ecosystem which basically work like a small enterprise, people are paid and they operate systems. Yes, they are sustainable, they can operate. But then again, when you're working at a level where people earnings are below a certain threshold, some element of subsidies do come in one way or the other.
Assalamu alaikum and hello everyone, this is Shaukat from Shaukat. So I think SPHF is a great platform in terms of bringing together all international development partners to contribute their specializations to one goal that all of us are achieving. My question is that in terms of sustainability, how much do you think that a psychological reorientation post-disaster is important in terms of sustainability? So for example, from the field, we have examples where what's infrastructure provisions are provided, but they're not being used because there's a particular mindset that kind of restrains individuals from using these interventions most efficiently. So how important is this psychological reorientation in terms of sustainability for our initiatives?
Go ahead. Apparently the mic has been handed over to you.
No, that's a brilliant question. I have a question of my own. That's a brilliant question. I mean, I don't know if the village reconstruction committees were, playing some kind of role in helping with that.
Okay.
This is very peculiar.
See, the thing is that no entity or no project is perpetual. Right? So the universal concept is changed. So, question is that we establish or we facilitate establishment. Let me cite you an example of how we develop these small communities. And I'm sorry for being a little crude. I was working in Shafi in those times. This law frame was in fashion. So I went to a village and there was this person and I asked him, the CEO of the community organization member, where is the secretary sir? He said, he refused to give me any information. He said that secretary would come and that he would give me the information. So then the secretary came and I said, what do you do for your development of your village? He said, log frame banate. He prepared log frame. I said, well, fine, log frame banate, but karte kya? Get a log frame banate. Right? Why I'm citing this example? What is log frame? Its logic, probably, we never understood that logic. I remember very well I was once working in there was this gentleman, Comrade Ramzan. So once I asked him, Comrade Ramzan, give me a lesson of your life, and he said that the sign was Loom ka ideal zalim. He said that oppressed always idealizes the oppressor. Right? So this convention is the one. So basically, what I'm talking about is that we outsiders, instead of relying on conventional wisdom, working with them, we try to go with our own interventions. What we need to do is, number one, to change behavior. As I said, we have been saying that facilitation is critically important. For instance, I will cite some very crude examples and hope nobody will mind us. We have got a very serious issue of disability in this province. And one of the reasons is intra-family marriages. Right? And we have been taking up this issue for the last 2-3 months. Now, what this requires is that this requires a massive behavioral change at the rural areas. Now, as a if I'm doing a project and if I'm thinking from a project perspective, I will not have these results in 3 years or 4 years. We'll never have these results. So I will probably not be interested in this. But in order to have that behavior change, I have to go with a massive behavior change approach, which basically, a behavior change approach, which will, I would say, where I'm not number mesmerized. And what do I mean by number mesmerized? How many houses I built? 2.1 million. I will consider myself successful. Sorry, no. Brick and mortar, we are so mesmerized with numbers, we are so mesmerized with tangible things that these very important intangible things are missed out. I'll cite you a few examples where I'm not blaming ourselves, but I'm just. I was working in Dera Ismail Khan. In Dera Ismail Khan, there was a tradition that by the dusk, whatever bill anybody had available in his house because they had assets, they would give it free to the poor. Right? उसको मैंने कहा यार क्यों उसको देते हो? गरीब को दे देते. We went in. We said, okay, fine. You have got a milk, you have extra milk. So why you are giving it free? Why don't you sell it? Because then I can give you a refrigerator. What has happened? We have changed the value system. Where a poor family who was getting that milk free of cost, that milk is no longer available. So when we go with an intervention into the development project, I'm not denying importance of physical infrastructure. I'm not denying importance of physical infrastructure. But what I'm suggesting is with that, the repercussions or the negative sides of that we must keep in mind. I will not go into details because there are so many examples. There is one last example I would cite, and that is from Sir Parker. My friends who are sitting here know that I've extensively worked in Nilambar, I will say, there also. There was one person I met, an old person in district Third Desert. And there was a road built, and I said, आपको इसका सड़क का कितना फायदा होगा? He said, yes. मैंने कहा, the kind of a person I am, I asked him, कभी कोई नुकसान हुआ? कहता साईं, पहली दफा चोरी होना शुरू. Which basically what he was saying was that it was the first time theft started because of the road. Why theft कैसे start होगी? He said because in Sarparkar, in Thar, livestock is lifeline, right? It's the most important thing. A Corona would come, pick a goat, put it in the trunk of the Corona, gone. So what he was doing was blaming the road. I'm not saying don't blame the road, but what I'm saying is blame that. Last point on this, which was very important, anybody from the Parker from here, anybody from Thar. आप सर में जब पुराने जूते होते थे, ये चप्पल सॉफ्टी आने से पहले किस तरह के जूते थे?
ये तो थोड़ा याद नहीं है, तो प्लास्टिक की थैलियाँ भी नहीं थी तब तो हमारे यहाँ तो वो अक्की बांधा करते थे कभी.
कैसे?
सुना था, देखा.
सुना था मैंने आज बहुत. You know, before these flip flops in Tarbaka, they used to have a very different kind of shoes, and one of the reasons was snake. What we did was we came with ink and development. We came with flip flops. We came with a kind of different kind of shoes. So snake bites increase. So I'll stop over here. The point basically I want to make is that please go when we go with an intervention. Like we are going to, this is the credit I would like to give to SPHF, that we are not into building, we are not with brick and mortar, we are also trying to change behavior. We are talking, I would say I'm daily, almost every second, third day, I'm breathing on the necks of my implementing partners, asking them to talk about disability, because this is a serious issue. So I'm not concerned if this is what I said to once to SPHF that I would not like to be, I don't care whether 2.5 million houses are built or not, but I will be ashamed if those 111,000 persons with disabilities are not provided with accessible houses. That is where I would say. So it's up to us how we look at this. Sorry.
Great, I think we are at time. Is it a very burning question? Or is it a side question that can be asked?
I want to ask from you that you are working with government as a bank, and I'm talking about the Sindh government. It's not, known for Sindh government is famous for its governance, as you know. So you are working with government of Sindh, and what challenges you are facing? Because I'm also working in the rural population in Sindh province, so I'm sharing my 3 challenges. That's the population growth is our challenge. Most of our young generation, the first priority of our young and educated generation is go to outside from the country. And third one is inflation. And you are talking here about creating the jobs. So what challenges you are facing in this?
Look, I cannot comment on the 3 points you have raised because that is something which is beyond my review. But one thing, our relationship with government, this project would not have been possible without government's support. And once government visualized or understood the idea, they made fully supportive. There has not been any political interference. I don't think these implementing partners are here. There hasn't been any political interference. As far as youth is concerned, it's a kind of thing, the economic conditions will of course encourage people to go out. Honestly speaking, I'll be hypocrite if I say that that is not a negative comment on this. My own son has gone abroad, so I can't comment on others also. So, as far as inflation is concerned, yes, there is a problem. This housing project is a lot of inflationary problems, but now things are set. Somehow it was house reconstruction also important that we would mobilize resources. That's why we will do this.
So we are at time. I'm very sorry. We have to close. I know there's a lot of questions, but maybe we can have side conversation with our panel member, being pressurized by the organization to invite you to tea and continue this conversation there. So I want to thank everybody for their time and the panelists for their insightful comment. And I noted a few key takeaways during this session is that not only effective recovery requires purposeful and coordinated partnership, but also inclusive programming should be intentional and from the design and the onset. And finally, that innovative financial model can make recovery more accessible. And I'm sure this is a conversation that has way more questions and can be continued, but thank you very much. Thank you, panelists. And there's tea, apparently, in Xavier Hall. So.